Hello everyone, my name is Spencer Walsh. Welcome to today's show. We have a good one for you as always. On the show today, big news coming out of Lebanon as Israel has set off multiple devices. We're hearing about walkie-talkies. We're hearing about various pagers. We're hearing about various other kind of electronic equipment of really multiple different types at this point over 2 consecutive days now, today and yesterday, exploding in Israel. We'll give you all the information you need to know, what it means for the war, what has exactly happened, and how to process it within the grander scheme of Israeli crimes. Also, another horrific story out of Gaza with another blatant Israeli attack on civilians that should not need, you can't be emphasized enough. Just a long line of horror after horror after horror going on in there. We're also going to be talking about the Fed cutting interest rates for the first time in 4 years at a half a point, not a quarter of a point, as some people had predicted. A little bit of a bigger step up. And really a big sign that they're getting the message, mostly from big business at this point, that they need to get the interest rates on the chopping block, what that means for you. Because it doesn't mean a lot of good things. I will say that. It's a good sign. But also the Teamsters have a big announcement about the election. We'll tell you how significant that is as well. Time to get into all of the latest today about what is exactly happening in Lebanon at the moment. We have 2 straight days, essentially, of devices, various pagers, thousands of pagers exploding across Lebanon yesterday. More explosions today of handheld devices, including walkie-talkies, laptops, and radios, have killed at least 14 people and injured 450. And these are, predominantly, especially in the first day, it seems that they're predominantly Hezbollah using pagers kind of to use more simplistic technology. But now it seems that this attack has, gone beyond Hezbollah and is just designed to stoke fear within the Lebanese society by, exploding doctors, walkie-talkies, exploding, kind of random appliances that have all been kind of, Trojan horsed, it seems, according to, the New York Times is now gleefully talking about how Israel has attached bombs to these various appliances that you can detonate essentially at will. And that is, that is where we're at with the major American media sources right now. I think it's very convenient because it does multiple things. It designates it allows Israel to do what it always has wanted, which is expand the war. And because the first attack primarily targeted, Hezbollah terrorists, they can turn around and they can say for every other group since then, as they eventually, of course, go on and expand to civilian targets, they can be like, oh, hey, wait a minute. These are all civilian targets these are all terrorist targets that we're targeting. They're not in any way, why, if your friend's laptop exploded and it killed them or burned their face off, they must have been a terrorist. Otherwise, it wouldn't have blown up, wouldn't it have? Like that is what they're going to use. And also, it just the same way that in Gaza, it very, very effectively. And I think part of the effectiveness is because it's so subtle. Allows them to paint Lebanese civilians as terroristic forces, as threats to Israel, as they've done to great effect. It's been a big part of their Gaza strategy. And now here you can see very clearly they're trying to do it in Lebanon with this. Only because I've seen already, only the terrorist laptops would explode. So, reports on Wednesday of several simultaneous blasts quickly spread on messaging apps, with people sharing images of exploded walkie-talkies and residential buildings on fire. Here's what we know. According to Al Jazeera, information is still trickling in, but several blasts were reported in the southern suburbs of Beirut, as well as the southern city of Tyre on Wednesday afternoon. Images posted on social media showed vehicles on fire and smoke rising from residential areas as reports came in of walkie-talkie radios and solar cells apparently exploding as well. Al Jazeera correspondent Ali Hashem witnessed one car explode during a funeral in southern Lebanon, seemingly set ablaze from an explosion from within rather than being hit by a drone, he noted. So this is, I don't know if this is the kind of doubt that's going to happen now in your mind, because they are very, very clearly, they're targeting other people. There's a girl in the first day of attacks who had her face blown off by giving her, pager to her father. That guy, by all accounts, was not involved in Hezbollah, and now the girl is dead, and she was never involved in Hezbollah, obviously. It is a completely, it's designed to not only kill Hezbollah, it's designed to kill civilians. They don't care about killing civilians. And it's also designed to tear apart Lebanese society from within, make people so afraid of every single appliance that they have, and just make people descend into absolute chaos. They are not going to stop. These people, the Israeli government, is not going to stop until the Lebanese people are completely at each other's throats, or they begin to attack Israel and they give Israel an excuse to attack back with all of their U.S.-supported might. Probably we are witnessing another wave, really concerning given that yesterday's incident already overwhelmed the whole health sector, Hashem added. There are reports of several devices blowing up. Among them are walkie-talkie radios, mobile phones, laptops, and even some solar energy systems. Several cars reportedly exploded as well, but it's not clear if those were caused by the car itself exploding or something inside it. So a regular walkie-talkie is a handheld two-way radio that allows people to exchange messages with the walkie-talkie base or others holding mobile receivers. There are short-range devices. They need to stay close to their base to transmit. These devices, being called walkie-talkie radios, are apparently ICV-82s, manufactured by the Japanese company ICOM. Radios have a much bigger range than regular walkie-talkies, and ICV-82s, according to the Jerusalem Post, are typically used by amateurs for personal use rather than for commercial or emergency broadcasting. We don't know too much about how the radios exploded yet, but some observers have wondered if Wednesday's blasts were similar to what happened with the pagers. With those, the supply chain might have been infiltrated and devices loaded with 1 to 3 grams of a powerful explosive. And that's, if you look at what's up now in the New York Times, again, as they're gleefully reporting, these civilian-based and civilian-targeted attacks into Lebanon now, as we're clearly seeing this now targeting much more than just these so-called Hezbollah pagers. They're clearly expanding their depth and their breadth quite substantially, and because of that, I think it is very, very disturbing to see where this goes next. But several of them quickly took out the batteries of their radios and tossed them away. Some of these Hezbollah members believe the explosions are linked to batteries. They took the batteries out of their radios and tossed them away after one exploded during a funeral in the southern suburb of Beirut, according to a Reuters news agency. Most of the impacted devices appeared to be communication systems, but there were also some reports of devices exploding, like solar panels. At least one such explosion injured a girl. And I think that the girl now is dead. This is a kind of out-of-date situation. Israel's long-term strategy is unclear, but the attacks are definitely a notable kind of step up here in this tit-for-tat, I guess, situation of rockets being exchanged, airstrikes by Israel on increasingly civilian areas. And I may be wrong about this, but I don't know if Hezbollah's explicitly hit any civilian targets. They have not. They did not respond after the multiple assassinations, after the assassination of the Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. But this is definitely going to be tough, as in terms of psychological warfare, and also, not just for Hezbollah, but for the broader Lebanese society who is relying on this. Like, this is relied on in the health sector. This, pretty much any place where you would need kind of quick, fast communication. Any place where even in America you'd be using walkie-talkies. Like, they are relying on this stuff too. It's definitely also civilian infrastructure, and these people, Hezbollah is a political party. It's not all just the fighters, and they're going to be out in the grocery store. They're going to be in the supermarket. They're going to be killing people. With these explosions, it just put a bunch of little bombs in all these civilian areas. And of course, they operate in civilian. It's like, yes, they're people. It's like, that is just the fact of the matter. It's also, there's, just as in, Hamas has been the government of Israel, of Gaza. So they also have, some civil servants that have ties to Hamas because they're, Hamas police, so-and-so. Because they are the ruling party in Gaza, at least on paper. Hezbollah in Lebanon is the same way. Hezbollah's communication apparatus appeared to remain operational, according to political analyst Elijah Magnier, who said after the first attack, thousands of older pages were unaffected, and the group had alternative secure communications in place. As panic set in, people in Lebanon started disposing of their devices or taking them to shops to be checked. At the American hospital, the Lebanese army used a controlled detonation to neutralize the apparently unexploded device discovered by medical staff in an ambulance. So that is a very remarkable situation there. And thank God they caught that one because, again, exploding an ambulance. I think there's, when ambulances are being exploded anywhere in the Middle East, I think there is normally one very likely, suspect that you unfortunately have to turn to very more often than not. And I think we all know what country that is. I mean, if you're following the news in any way, shape, or form, if you're following this show, you know exactly what country I am talking about. I do want to go to Marwan Bashara of Al Jazeera English on this, who always has a good piece of analysis on the situation, putting into perspective for us regarding this, this whole situation, what it means for the broader Middle Eastern crisis and the genocide in Gaza.
What happened yesterday and now today. How are you thinking about this? Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with so many contradictions been told and reported and analyzed that they are creating more confusion than they are an understanding of what's going on. And the contradiction is just because people are not taking what is happening seriously and or interpreting it in magical and fantastical ways. I'll give you just two examples of what we just heard just now. The attack yesterday and today, either it is use it and lose it, because Hezbollah discovered it somehow and then the Israelis were forced to use it immediately, hence they had no other choice. They would have rather used it in the beginning of a wider war, or this is meant to be sending messages. It can't be both. I mean, it could be a message of some sort, but it's not intentional. They just had to use it. So which one? Is it that they had to use them? Meaning, after they rigged the communication devices, that they basically detonated them because it was just time and they couldn't lose the time? Or they actually done this strategically with the specific timing in order to send messages to Iran, Hezbollah, and so on and so forth. Second, we keep talking about, different words like fear and paranoia and so on and so forth, especially used by the Israelis. But in fact, what this was an act of mass terror. That's what it was. And there seems to be a misunderstanding about that as well. I've heard 24 hours of reporting and analysis on various outlets and newspapers and TVs and so on and so forth. And I'm struck by how much the mass act yesterday of terror is downplayed, especially in Israel and various parts of the West, but also in various parts of the Middle East. And why do I say that? You see, because it's sort of confusing when you say, it's okay, they hit Hezbollah. But I have news for people who think anyone who was holding that pager is a legitimate target, that 1 million Israelis then who are shopping today or going to the cinema or are in the parks with their children are also legitimate targets. Because about 1 million Israelis serve in the Israeli army, whether as reserves or as on duty. So are we saying that each and every Israeli man and woman today who serve in the army, in the reserve or in active duty are legitimate targets? Is that what we're saying? Because Hezbollah is a political party and a number of things, associations and medical...
Yeah, so always, I could listen to Marwan Bashar go on for quite a long time. Very, very knowledgeable guy about the Middle East, but we do have to kind of soldier on here with more details into this before the latest explosion. I think it's very interesting to say, and the point that Bashar is bringing up there, just about the way it has been processed, I think is also so important. And you see that with the New York Times, see that how it's being played in the West, and just thinking about it, had the roles been reversed, I think is very, very important and instructive. On Wednesday, Hezbollah said this again before the latest explosion, said it attacked Israel artillery positions with rockets in the first strike on Israel since the initial attacks, according to Reuters. This attack by Israel has been seen in Lebanon as a terrorist attack because it has fed terror, Al Jazeera's Imran Khan said. From Beirut, people are scared. Magnier said Israel had successfully managed to create confusion among Hezbollah and in society. He noted that the cascading reports of climate of chaos as a sign of Israel's strategy to wait more than 24 hours before the second detonation had been a successful one. This kind of, it could happen again tomorrow. Like, things are out of control. It is really designed to create terror. It is a complete and total act of terror. So we could be doing the show on Friday talking about, two more of these situations. They're just, exploding them off little by little by little. And, it'd be interesting to see if Hezbollah will respond or how they will respond. I've heard, Ali Hashem of Al Jazeera talking about they're going to look inwards. They're going to try and, get their own house in order before anything else, changes. But it's going to be very interesting to see how this takes shape. So videos circulated online of men out and about buying fruit or checking out the grocery store when a small explosion sends them tumbling to the ground and bystanders running from the detonation. Lebanese Health Minister Firas Abiad said that more than 200 people are in critical condition in some 150 hospitals. More injuries were in the face, hands, and the stomach. People across the country described scenes of horror and sounds of explosion as screams of pain ran out in the streets. Among the dead was Fatima Abdullah Jafar, a 10-year-old in Sarin, Lebanon, who died when her father's pager exploded. The Lebanese government held Israel responsible for the attack. However, Israel refrained at first from making any remarks. Israel media reports said the office of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered ministers to not give interviews at this time. Earlier on Tuesday, Israel announced the expansion of its war goals to include northern residents returning to their homes. Oh, yes, great. We get another thing that they're asking for now that could be very easily achieved with a ceasefire deal. Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant said that time to avoid a military confrontation in Lebanon was running out, and the only way left to ensure the return of Israel's northern communities would be through military action. And another all too familiar scene now coming out of Israel, where the Israeli army bombed an entire residential block of the Al Barij refugee camp in Gaza Strip at dawn on September 17th. Over 7 housing buildings housing obviously Palestinian families were completely destroyed, caving in on the top of the heads of the inhabitants. According to the witnesses, the Israeli army prevented ambulance and civil defense crews from reaching the site to rescue those who may have survived, using quadcopter drones to shoot at anyone who arrived. So it's unclear how many died from this, but it seems the civil defense teams, they came in, they first arrived on the site around 5:30 a.m. and began rescue efforts despite the difficulty of working in the dark without proper equipment, which they haven't had really throughout this whole thing. The spokesperson for the civil defense in Gaza, Mahmoud Bazal, told Mondo Weiss that the civil defense teams first arrived at the site. They found that all the bombed houses had been inhabited by 3 families: the Tartawi family, the Abu Shoka family, and the Batran family, which accounted for over 50 people in the buildings. Our team arrived on site and saw the bodies of the martyrs under the rubble and the ceilings that had fallen on top of them. Not long after first responders started pulling up to the scene, essentially, and getting victims out of the rubble, the Israeli army's drones arrived and shot rescuers, journalists, and bystanders. There were also voices of people under the rubble, but suddenly, while the teams were working, Israeli drones began shooting at the location and ordering people through speakers to leave the area immediately. Our crews withdrew after several people were injured, including civilians who participated in digging for martyrs alongside the civilian defense crews. So it's just like, what is the normal society, explanation for that? It's like, again, the only way that they can carry this stuff out is because if people don't know about it, if people don't know these details, and they have such a history of just anti-Arab racism and assumptions that all of these, Muslim people want death to America, and this, the Israelis, they're like us, like this kind of very vague assumption that is deep, kind of just ingrained as like a deeply just embedded chip in the American mind. And you also have a media that is not covering any of this stuff and is instead joyfully covering, civilians dying in a attack, which is clearly designed to cause terror in another country, which is Lebanon. And it's just like, oh, look at this masterful move Israel did. Let's like this, like the Mi-5, they snuck it in there. Isn't that so great? It's like, yeah, the civilians were also killed very significantly in that attack too. But, anyway, it's just like this is another level. It's just like we have seen a complete disregard for the life of all, Palestinians. And it's almost getting tired at this point, but it's just another piece of evidence to make this case just so much more undeniable and indisputable. It's like, what other conclusion are you supposed to draw from this? So it's like, I'm generally at a loss to think about how anyone could come up with anything else, because it is obscene. And it just shows a complete disregard for humanity and for human life. Like, these people, to them, are like little vermin. Like, there's probably some laughing IDF member sitting, a few miles away, wherever their command center is, and closer to Gaza or up, by Jerusalem or Tel Aviv or whatever. But, they're just like, oh, no, we got him. Let's get him. Oh, they're digging him out. It's like this was, back in 2014, they were selling shirts of pregnant women in crosshairs with the caption 2 shots, 1 kill. Like, that was a popular, Israeli shirt that was making the rounds back in 2014. This is the attitude that, they've carried themselves with since a very, very long time in Israeli history. This is what led to October 7th. This is what led them to take any, genuine effort at peacemaking and any sort of justice for the Palestinians. It's led them to take it completely off the table. And that is why we are in the situation we're on now. It's a complete disregard for Palestinians as humans. Like, you don't make those jokes. You don't shoot people trying to dig their dead out of the apartment building that you just bombed. Like, not just the bombing, again, is one thing, because then you could be like, oh, Hamas was in the apartment building, even though they obviously weren't, and you're a little more subtle about it. But then you're specifically bombing the ambulances that are coming to pick them up. So it's just like, it's just all this hyperbolic stuff, this just arms flailing exaggeration that we see from the Israelis. Just the most moral army in the world, the only democracy in the Middle East, like, that is all to cover up. Again, every accusation with them is a confession just about how just depraved they are, because this is what a depraved country does. There is no doubt about it. And they've done it time and time again throughout this entire conflict. And it's just one other example. Okay, so now we're going to make a pretty hard turn to economic news. The Fed has made a large rate cut and forecasts more to come today. So they just cut their rates by half a percentage point, a unusually large move, and a clear signal that, by the way, this is in the New York Times, I should say, with Jenna Smielek. We're not using their Israel stuff, but their other stuff is normally pretty good. Our patient approach has been, over the past few years, has paid dividends, said Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, during his news conference. But now the upside risks to inflation have diminished and the downside risks to unemployment have increased. The Fed's decision lowers rates to about 4.9%, down from more than a 2-decade high. The pivot comes in response to months of fading inflation and is meant to prevent the economy from slowing so much the job market begins to weaken more painfully. As it's already very much been slowly weakening, the jobs have been kind of coming back. I think that it's a large part due to a lot of stimulus in the economy brought about by Joe Biden and the rescue plan, a lot of just general investment, which has been, whether it be the stimulus, whether it be just general investment in jobs, whether it be child tax credit, just making sure people are functional players in the economy, in the middle class, has been very, very effective in terms of keeping them in their jobs. And the tight labor market that we saw, that's definitely gone away now, I think, which is a big part of this plan and why they kept it going for so long, even when inflation has been down pretty reasonably for, I'd say, almost, this whole calendar year now. So that is definitely that is definitely a part of it, and it's good that they're bringing it down. But I think this is very clear. This message is coming from Wall Street. I think you could look to see some economic sentiments like lending is going to get a lot easier. That could be very, very helpful come election time. So you could get to see a little bit of a boost from Kamala Harris as she gets to come out and take credit for the economy. But if she's not really getting hit for the economy right now, it could get played, it could get metabolized by the public, a billion different ways. Because again, she's not getting blamed for the economy right now, really. So would you get blamed for a good economy? I don't know. Again, it is so out of left field. But what I think is probably the safest bet is we start to see a lot of talk and a lot of better economic sentiment, because things will start to improve, especially for probably the housing market as well, which will probably be a very significant sign for a lot of key demographics that, things are looking up. Things are, we're starting to move in the right direction. The recovery is not as long and drawn out as it was under Obama and all that stuff. So we're going to take it meeting by meeting. Powell said we made a good start, a strong start to this, and that is frankly a sign of our confidence that inflation is coming down. So this is definitely a soft landing success here. High interest rates it slowed the economy by making it more expensive, again, to borrow a house or expand a business, which weighs on both demand and price increases. But they also hold back hiring, given that the Fed has been trying to strike a careful balance. Officials have aimed to slow the growth to ensure that the price increases return to normal without cooling it so much that the unemployment rate soars and the economy tips into a recession. Again, that's that fine line, is that soft landing that we have heard so much about, and that's what they are trying for. So they are assuming that the rates by end of 2025 could be in the neighborhood of 4%. End of 2024, anywhere it's around 4.9 right now, could be in the neighborhood of anywhere from 5 to 4%, mostly around 4.5 there. We will see. The Fed will have to proceed with caution in the months ahead. Some economists have worried about the central bank already falling behind because unemployment has risen to 4.2%, which is low by historical standards, but up notably from 3.4% in early 2023. One Fed governor, Michelle Bowman, voted against Wednesday's rate cut. She would have preferred a smaller rate move. I think that's, pretty stupid, but, whatever. Anyway, so we'll probably see more cuts down the line. It's going to start to ease up the economy a bit. Things are going to start to open their wings again, spread a little bit back to normal after a very tight grip on lending and business expansion and all of the many, many downstream effects that has. The United Brotherhood of Teamsters has just made a big decision for the 2020 race. They're going to be staying out of things. They're not going to be endorsing a candidate. They're not going to be endorsing Kamala Harris in the election. In a statement, the influential union of 1.3 million members said that it would not endorse either Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris or Republican former President Trump. The Teamsters thank all candidates for meeting with the members face-to-face during our unprecedented roundtables. Teamster General President Sean O'Brien said in a statement, "Unfortunately, neither major candidate was able to make serious commitments to our union to ensure the interests of working people are always put before big business. The move breaks with decades of precedent. The Teamsters have endorsed the Democratic candidate in every election since 2000, and the union has not declined to endorse a candidate since 1996. It also comes as both Democratic and Republican parties have been courting organized labor ahead of the November 5th election, which is expected to be far hard fought between Trump and Harris." That there is from Al Jazeera. It is very, very interesting stuff. So it's kind of an inconclusive polling data. So but according to the presidential town hall straw polls, kind of all went very different ways. So the town hall straw poll was when Biden was still in. It was 44% Biden to 36% Trump, and then 5.6 for RFK. Then 34% Harris to 59.6 Trump was the electronic member poll. Then the research poll was about 58 to 31 Harris, or Trump over Harris. So this was conducted all in various ways. 1.3 million members. It's going to get everyone differently in terms of different involvement. But to kind of break this down here, it's very interesting because we look at, there's like three different parties. You got Kamala, you got Teamsters, and you got Donald Trump. I think this is probably a pretty smart move for the Teamsters because if you look at it, you got a pretty pro-Trump base and you got Kamala, who's not really going to offer you anything. You kind of get to stand out a little bit. You get to be the kind of person who's just like, yeah, I'm playing a little hard to get. And honestly, like if he had come out and endorsed Harris, it's kind of a tried and true strategy. And pretty much, Sean Fain, he got a lot for it. Or he's worked well with the Democrats, so I kind of get why he did it. And especially with Biden, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out for him in terms of building a strong relationship with the Harris administration. But being someone like Sean Fain, I think he's going to have no problem, holding the Harris administration's feet to the fire if they don't live up to their end of the bargain. But he also has way less Trump supporters in the union. Sean O'Brien, he does, and I think endorsing Harris, I think is not going to help him too much in terms of his kind of main administrative focuses, like organizing Amazon is a big one, trying to expand into some of the more niche delivery markets as Teamsters, a big truck driving unit, like this stuff. Kamala Harris probably not going to help with that. Trump, it would be, I think, just a stupid move for a union to endorse Trump in any way, shape, or form. So it probably it's sensible that he didn't do that. So he kind of gets to keep the status quo, play a little bit hard to get, and make his members' voice very appealing. I don't think it really hurts Kamala Harris either. I don't think the Teamsters endorsement probably not holding the biggest weight with his members. A lot of people who are very involved are most likely to be Democratic voters, but a lot of traditional Teamsters members, truck drivers, they're going to be most likely I was voting for Trump all the way. There's a lot of Midwestern truck drivers that are big Trump supporters. It's just part of it. White guys, no college degree, Trump's strongest demographic. It always has been. So not going to really be too much for that. But in terms of Kamala Harris, I don't think she's going to lose any votes by, the Teamsters aren't endorsing. Any would-be kind of democratically aligned voter would hold off on the Teamsters not endorsement. I don't think so. But for Trump, I think he is going to be sore after this one. I think probably justifiably so, because he did play into it. He invited him to the convention. He gave his speech. He kind of sucked up to Trump a little bit, Sean O'Brien did, but he gave his speech. He got his union talking points off in a room where there was a lot of corporate people there. He kind of teased him a little bit and ended up not endorsing him. And had this gone the other way, I think it would have been a real victory for kind of a momentum mover back in the Trump direction to say, hey, I have some working class pull. I'm different. I'm not just like other Republicans. I actually have that, populist relationship with the unions. I'm not just like, going to be, tax cuts for the rich guy, even though he is that more than ever in this administration, which I think is why he's a big reason why he's not going to do as well. So I think that essentially sums it up. We go through the situation. It's not going to be a very, very dramatic situation. That is all the time we have for you today. We're back on Friday. This is Newsflash.